Hey guys, welcome back to Benchfeld Custom. So today I'm sharing with you a Conan vs. Medusa resin kit statue that I finished putting together. So it is a very big statue. It's basically a 1/4 scale, but there's two characters in it at that scale. So it's almost like a 2-in-1 statue, but a lot of detail. I did break it down pretty well for paint and also breaking it down to like ship it. Client's pretty happy with it. He's coming tomorrow, pick her up. I also did a kit review on the whole raw form as well, so you can check that out. It should be on my channel. And then I also did a work in progress of taking this Conan letter sword opener, and I used the metal one in his hand instead of the resin one that came with it. And I'll show you the resin one too, but we're getting a little bit closer. I did a couple custom work on just basically the sword and Medusa's tail. And then as far as like her earrings, we just didn't do the hoop earrings. I actually went and found like some really cool looking earrings at the hobby store, and we used those instead. So let's get a little bit closer. We'll break down everything and just show you what it did. Now when he gave it to me, I asked him, I said, what are you looking to do? And he wanted to do something realistic, but I was like, why don't we do something like, the Clash of the Titans, where she's got that kind of like scaling look on her skin. And he was like, yeah, let's go for it. So I did it, and it came out pretty cool. So, like I say, I always like to change a pace, of doing statues. I always do superhero stuff, so it's always nice to change things up. But you can pretty much see all the detailing I went. So we're getting a little bit closer here. So what it was is I painted her skin up, so you can see all this greenish skin around her. You can see all this type of green skin that I did. So what I did was I gave her a nice good skin tone, and then what I did is I darkened up a lot of areas. So I darkened this all up with some, what is it, like I guess some like browns. I did some darkening up and around the muscles. I left the breast areas like fairly light. I darkened up underneath the chin. And then what I did is I took a paintbrush and I sat there, very tedious work, and I just kept putting dots all over the item, and then I created those scales. And then I did some transparency colors over that. I blended it in, so it kind of looks like the scaling is there, like you can see under her cheeks, and then it starts to blend into her skin. So it's kind of like a little bit of a different take on her. And just ran with that. Underneath her, underneath here, I guess what you could call, the belly, legs or area. So we did some like, yellowish green skin there. Her armor was pretty cool. I did a, what was it, kind of like a citadel bronze. But then what I did is I did an interference red over it, so it gives it like this kind of reddish tint. So it worked out pretty cool. So you can see how that worked out. Now, let's see if we can get a little bit. What else? So there's the face. Now she came with these hoop earrings. These here, these little hoop ones. And I asked the client. I said, I was over at this hobby store and I found these really cool earrings. I thought maybe why don't we put these on? So it's kind of like if you were to cut her head off, you get a little bit of a treasure too, so it's kind of a little bit more fun. And he was like, yeah, so you can see these hoop earrings, they're real metal. You can kind of flop them around and you can turn them, so I think it just adds a little bit more to her. And he was down with that too, so it worked out. The snakes were a little bit of a pain, I'm not gonna lie. Those snakes were very, very tedious to paint, but they were also hard to kind of connect. You had to kind of like piece them out and organize them, and how to get them into the head. I had one snake that just would not fit in like where it was supposed to, and it was this main one here. So what I had to do is I placed it in, but I put a lot of A's down in there, and I let the A's cure it, and then I kind of put more A's and I touched it up. So you really can't see deep into the head, but at least it's secured now. But pretty much see all the scaling in the back of her. Now I gave her like a glossy gloss coat at the end because I wanted to make her a little slimy looking. Because you don't want her being all flat. You want to give her a little bit of a slimy look. And you can see what I did with the shell. Shell's got a lot of pearlized in it. It's got some, washes. And try to just kind of blend the armor into the shell. So you figure like this armor starts to kind of blend into the shell. And then you get the armor of the shell. So just something a little bit different. It's kind of like, I know I don't do a lot of monster stuff, but this is kind of how I envision like Medusa in a way. So client was pretty happy with it. Like I said, it's something a little bit different than what other people would paint up. Now as far as her breaking down, I did design her where each arm comes out with a peg, as you can see. We have a pegged and it's magnetized. And then I also did it with the head as well. So like the head, you don't want to grab it by the tongue because you snap it. But if you kind of just grab here and underneath the cheeks, you can kind of pop out the head. And you can see how the pieces dangle. So it's really cool. I did attach the earrings, so they're not really removable because there's just no way it would have worked and stuff. And then like a little small touch underneath her neck, I put a little bit of a diamond to kind of match these diamonds. So that worked out pretty cool. So that was pretty cool. That was like, you know, the focus and everything. Now, Conan does come in and out of the base, out of his legs. I'm not going to really pop it out, but he does come out like this way. There's like a really nice peg in this one leg. And then also, I also pegged out this little piece here. So this I painted up, and then what I did is I cut off the original handle because it was way too long. So what we did is we shrunk it down, I added a rod, I sculpted this, and then I wrapped this rope around it. So this kind of magnetizes in here, which works out pretty good. So, like I said, I did a video on this whole sword, and this sword is beautiful. It's a beautiful letter opener, and it just works out great for the statue. Just works out phenomenal. It was a little tricky, but once I planned it all out, it worked. So we'll back up a little bit here. We'll get a little bit closer too. But so this is the original sword. As you can see, if it was in his hand, it's a huge sword. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a huge sword like that. I mean, if you get the kit and you like that, that is perfectly fine. But the reason why it doesn't make sense to me having this long, if the sword was going to be at his hip, you can see it's almost touching the floor. That's a really, really long sword. And even if his feet were there, it would be going touching the feet, you know, almost like the toes or the heel. But, you know, so the client, he actually had one of these swords, letter opener swords, and it worked out pretty good. So that was kind of like the last thing. Now, there's no blood added into him because we were going to add blood, but after I sent some pictures, the client says he doesn't want any blood. He actually likes it the way it is. And, you know, I always say to people, if it's going on your shelf and you're happy with the way it looks, whether you want this or you want that or you want this, it doesn't matter what other people think. It's a matter what you like and what's on your shelf. So we're at the point where he just says, you know what, I don't want any blood. I like it the way it is. So I was like, okay, not a problem. So we ran with it. So we'll get a little bit closer so we can show you Conan. Now, it may be kind of hard to see, but he's looking down, and I told the client, I was like, you know what, when I do the transfer eye decals, I said, let's make sure he's looking down and not looking at her eyes, because the minute Conan looks at her eyes, game over, right? So he's got to be looking down. Of course, you know, he's probably looking at her, you know, breasts or whatever, so, you know, whatever you got to do to survive, I guess. And this is as far as the blood as we went. So he did get scratches here. So when I was doing all the skin tone, I did add like the blood in there. I did add some like, you know, blues and stuff that looked like it kind of bruised up, and that worked out pretty cool. So you really can't see Conan too much, only because a lot of the stuff's in the way. But his skin may look a little bit shiny, but I did really dull it down because I wanted to give it a nice good gloss coat and then dull it, because you have to handle him going in and out of the base, and you might, you know, scratch up some of that paint since it's not really, you know, it's not really durable. So I wanted just to make sure. But as far as the paint, you know, I just made leather. I dulled it down because I figure Conan's not really going to have really, you know, really nice, good, crisp, clean things. It's going to be dirty. So I just ran with all that. Now, one of the main customizing parts I did on the statue is the tail. So let's get a little bit closer down here. So you can see the tail the way it is. It's kind of like a rattlesnake tail. So as I was painting it up, this was actually the tail. This is actually the tail. It would look like that. And then the client was like, you know what, I'm really not a fan of the tail. Is it possible we can do something different? So I was like, well, I'm kind of already done painting, so I always like to do custom work first and then paint. I don't like to go like in reverse because you could ruin the paint. But with this situation, I was like, okay, maybe we can make something. So I made one tail. It didn't look right. And then I made another tail. And then that one looked good. He was happy with it. So what I had to do is I chopped off the tail. I did some Abe's works. I resculpted, let it cured, and then I painted it up. So I think it works out pretty cool now. And then one of the last touches I did was on the tail at the tip, I added some epoxy clear, and I mixed it up with some yellow, so it looks like a drip of like poisons coming out of the tip of the tail now. So I mean, it's very small and subtle, but I think something like that's kind of cool, you know. And then of course the bottom of the base is just rocks. The base is very confusing because it's like she's spinning, but it's kind of like a whirlwind effect, so I don't really know, you know. I understand what they were doing with the base, but it's kind of confusing at the same time. So I just kind of ran with it, made it look dirty, because I didn't want to focus too much down below. I wanted to make sure we're focusing up top to her face. So that's why we did the silver eyes. I did the gold, the earring. So if anything, when you look at this kit, you're looking at the sword, and you're really checking out her face, which you don't want to do, but that's just the way it works. So that's pretty much the Conan vs. Medusa. I had a lot of fun doing this. Like I said, it's always a nice change of pace. It's always nice to show the people that I can do the monster stuff. It's just not my preference. It's just I'm not really into it that much. But this one was a little bit challenging, but fun at the same time. So hopefully you guys like the way they came out. A lot of fun. And we'll be back with some more videos.